Good morning, everybody. I hope this video finds you well. Today, I want to talk a little bit about geopolitical fences. And due to the dumbing down of entire swaths of Western society, nobody knows what the concept of a fence is. Oh, you may see it here and there, but people don't understand what a fence represents, whether it's in personal lives or physical manifestation of a fence around a house. So I'm going to have to go a little bit simplistic in this little video because, guys, there are people who are ignorant of what a fence represents. Fences is a way for you to keep out predators or those that offend you, those that may cause you trouble. Imagine you have a nice, cute little house. It's a tight little box. And you have a yard. And surrounding the house and the yard is a white picket fence with one single gate. A fence can be used to keep things in, such as a dog. And it can be used to keep things out, such as rabbits who may want to eat your vegetable garden. The rest of the community that you live in realizes that you have this fence. And they know that if they want to come visit you, they have to go to the front gate and ring a bell. Ding, ding, ding. In which case you will come out and open the gate for them. This is the historical norm and cultural norm throughout all societies on the globe. It is a basic fundamental idea that over time, especially in the West, with new modern and progressive ideas have somehow become clouded. Because we will see friends of the owner of that house coming in and out without ringing the bell, and so we may erroneously believe that we can do the same thing. We may also observe neighborhood children or bullies climbing over the fence and playing in the yard in defiance of the fact that there is a fence. And we do not see the consequences of those actions, while many times there are consequences because the owner of the house will pick up the telephone and call the parents of those other children, warning them off so they don't do that again. But to the observer, it's easy to make false impressions of what a fence is. Now, I argue that all nations have fences. Often they are physical fences, but they could just be simply lines on a map. Certainly the most inhospitable areas don't have fences. They're just lines on a map because it's a sparsely populated area, too cold, too mountainous, or just too much of a hassle to deal with. In the geopolitical world, these fences are absolute. But the West, led by the United States, has changed the meaning of what a physical fence is. And they routinely violate the fence, prompting some nations, such as Russia and China, to paint the fence red. They say, this is our red line. If you cross this, we will shoot you with our shotgun. You know that in the community, while every house in that community has a white fence, it's those houses that maintain the red fences that you dare not cross.
我们刚刚取得了全国的胜利，屁股下面的板凳还没有捂热，但是现在有人要把它抢回去，这个不能答应，就是这个道理。
We see great deals of misunderstandings regarding the fence. For instance, in the Solomon Islands, the Solomons are creating trade deals and infrastructure deals with the Chinese. In this house, known as the Solomons, they have a white fence. But people from Australia walking after they see that the deals and the discussions going on in this house don't like it at all. So they walk over to that white fence and they take out a bucket of paint and they paint it red and said, this is now our fence and it is our red fence. You are not allowed to do anything because it's now our red fence. That's unheard of in history, where one nation tells another nation what to do, and it's an independent nation. It's not a surrogate nation. But that's exactly what happened. And we will discuss the consequences of this grand folly. But for now, let's just continue with our narrative. Functionality and functionally, a fence is constructed around a house, and it's the owner of the house that gets to choose the color that they paint the fence. It would seem to be pretty obvious, but in today's confused world of doublespeak and all the nonsense, it's hard to understand what's actually going on, and the West uses this confusion and a dumbed-down population to point at a fence and say, that fence does not exist. You see, it only exists in your mind. It's not a physical fence, which is a real bullshit statement, but that's what's actually going on. Unfortunately. So, you see, people, what's going on in the world of geopolitics is often very, very simple if you break it down. Let's look at the Ukraine events, shall we? There's two houses, the House of Ukraine and the House of Russia. They share a fence. Russia painted its side of the fence red. The reason why it painted that side of the fence red is because the Russian children were all on the other side of the fence, in the yard of the House of Ukraine. And when they saw the owners of the House of Ukraine beating up their children, they became very angry and asked them to stop. And when they didn't, the House of Russia came over, tore down the fence, rescued the children, and is now beating the living crap out of the House of Ukraine. It's not a perfect analogy, but it's pretty close. And like all and everything, you can break it down into the most simplistic forms for ease of understanding. If you cannot break something down into a simple form, then you don't understand it. And that's how propaganda works, don't you know? You create a complicated narrative. And then people are too busy chasing after snipes and other aspects of that narrative, rather than looking at the entirety of the simplistic picture. So that's how fences work. In today's geopolitical world, there are now becoming an East and a West. The West is led by the United States, and they believe in a unipolar world. One nation to rule them all. One nation makes the rules. One nation to bind them. I think they were inspired by The Lord of the Rings by Tolkien, where you have the one ring that controls everything else. And little tiny Frodo Baggins must break hold of this horrible environment and this horrible situation. The Lord of the Rings was inspired by World War II and how the Nazis were doing the exact same thing the United States is doing now. I can't help but see the parallels, can you? It's very odd. But there you go. That's what you have. That's what you get. Everything can be broken down into simplistic terms. If you cannot break something down into simplistic terms, you don't understand it. So you have the unipolar world. And what they want is they don't like fences in this community at all. No fences for you. They want a world with no fences where they can come and go wherever they want without pretext. It's something that's been going on now for the last 75 years, but now they want to make it official. And the rest of the world says, no thank you, we like our fences. And it got to be so bad that both Russia and China had to paint their fences red, saying these are absolutes. And that's the situation that you have right now. Now, speaking about fences, let us consider something. Let us consider the current state of geopolitics, how the United States, and if you watch anything, if you know anything about geopolitics, you know who the villain is in this entire world right now. It's the oligarchs controlling the United States. That's who the villains are. So guys, think about it now. Just think about this. What do you suppose is going on with the fences in the Pacific? Well, we certainly have Australia that is acting as if it's a surrogate to the United States. It is doing things that is not in its best interest and is not in the best interest of its people. You can tell by the collapse of the coal industry, the collapse of the wine industry, the collapse of the grain industry. Of course, the United States is just smiling. But in return for all this, there's going to be nuclear weapons placed on Australia. Prior to Morrison, Australia was a very neutral and happy country. Now they want to become the United States battlefield. Morrison has volunteered the deaths of millions of Australians, all for Washington, D.C. And I think all of Australians agree that that's a wonderful idea. Not. I don't think anybody thinks it's a wonderful idea because they're not looking upon it that way. They think one of these days Australia's going to come and take over because of enter manufactured reason here. Actually, China doesn't want to have anything to do with Australia except to trade with it. If Australia wants to do whatever it wants, I think that's totally fine with China. They're totally cool with it. I think China's a nice place. But Morrison seems to think that he's empowered by God. Oh, he seems to think that he's empowered by Biden, President Biden, who was empowered by God. So therefore he is like Jesus Christ himself. Guess you don't want to hear that. Maybe you think he's a genius. Do you think Morrison is a savvy genius? Is that what you think? Or do you think he's just a tin horn puppet politician that's doing anything as long as he keeps money coming into his personal coffers? What do you think? What's more likely? Well, you've got the situation in Australia, and Gonzalo Lira pretty much sums it up. He says, yeah, there's going to be a pivot here to Australia because, and he argues rather convincingly, that Taiwan is fucked. Try to make a move on Taiwan, China will fucking kill you. Yeah, the word I like to use is slaughter, but not everybody understands what slaughter actually means. But it's the word that it best represents China. Slaughter. And that's what's in the pipe for you guys. Indeedy do. So Taiwan looks like a non-viable entity to achieve the goals. And Rand recognizes that. So it is pushing back to the second island chain. Korea, Japan, Australia. Pushing back, woo, clunk, to contain China. This idea to contain China is a laughable one because China has set up systems where shipping by sea is being phased out. So there's no need to patrol and create a huge white fence around China to blockade it from shipping things. I think that the systems are already in place where there's no need to do that. But yet they're still pushing. Why? If it's not for blockading purposes. Do you think that maybe they recognize that the BRI, the destruction of the BRI, is a hopeless cause? I guess so. Since all the stands aligned with Russia and China. And the color revolutions from Belarus to Kazakhstan to Afghanistan is all in Chinese favor. And the alignment of Pakistan and India alongside with the total control of Tibet and Xinjiang is all in Chinese favor. Do you think that maybe they're going to give up to trying to tear down those fences? Well, if they were smart, they would. And the latest publications out of Rand is saying, no, we need to set up a second island chain. Which has me scratching my head. You see me scratching my head? I'm scratching my head. I'm going to scratch it on the other side. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Scratch, scratch, scratch. I need a kitty cat to scratch my head. I'll pick him up. We'll scratch, 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 scratch. The cat will go like this. That's pretty much what I would do. So it's a mystery to me. What is actually going on? Let's look at that. Shall we? This is a curiosity to me. There's no need to do a blockade on China because the United States and the West have self-inflicted casualties in the global trade supply chain system. So there's no need for a blockade. But yet there seems to be this desire to create a blockade of China by using the first island chain, and what we're seeing now is a fallback to the second island chain. Why? And it seems to be the only obvious conclusion that one can come to this seems clear. Simply by reading what the Rand report is talking about, they're suggesting and urging nuclear weapon placement in Korea, Japan, and Australia aimed at China to deter China's growth. That's not going to deter China's growth. It's like people dancing around saying, I'm deterring China's growth by doing the cha-cha. That's not going to deter China's growth. It's going to deter China's expansion. China isn't expanding. What nations is China expanding in? So what's it all about? Why would anybody want to put these offensive nuclear weapons aimed at China on the second island chain or the first island chain? Well, to launch them. That's why. So it seems obvious to me that Plan A, Plan B, Plan C, Plan D, Plan E, and Plan F pretty much failed with the United States. And now it's going to Plan G, which is surround Asia with nuclear weapons and then destroy the entire thing completely. It sounds really bad, and that's because it is really bad. And anybody who believes that they can do that is an idiot. And yeah, look at who's running the West right now. You cannot tell me they're not idiots. Because they are. What they're doing is pure idiocy. And it's going to get millions of people killed. And that's what it looks like. It looks like fallback plans are being set in place. You can see the thinking of the leadership of America and the leadership of the West by reading the geopolitical policy papers. Not the news. Reading Judge Report will put you down some kind of bullshit rabbit hole. Reading Fox News is going to put you somewhere else. Reading Political will put you somewhere else. Reading the BBC will put you somewhere else. No, no, no. Read the policy papers. The current group of RAND policy papers are talking about placing nuclear weapons aimed at China, so that when China retaliates after the initial salvos, it doesn't hit the United States in retaliation, it hits the proxy nations. The idea behind this RAND study is to make it so that the United States remains unscathed while the United States destroys Asia.
如果心底现在被触碰还能有冲动，如果后悔未来又要去怪谁才不同，就算没有成功也好过面对到最后。都不喜欢的我，执着的理由我还没听够，若一无所有向前走，有苦衷不说，只相信应有，燃烧心底最深角落。冲破，对世界对自我失望过，回避过放弃过遗憾过，现在的我不想再闪躲，若白头比懦弱光荣，多少人生来就被选中，但他们不懂得奋斗。我知道我有种不灭的火种。日眼前一切冷漠的狂风，就算苦等永恒，总有天冰雪消融。3、2、1，抬起头，用力看看这宇宙，星空下平凡的你会选择怎样活？我要你回头，要你自由，要你冲破牢笼，不怕痛，不认怂，不甘平庸 ，nothing in my world is impossible。敢不敢鼓起奋勇 say come on， 就跟我走。对世界对自我失望过，回避过放弃过遗憾过，现在的我不想再闪躲，若白头比懦弱光荣，就算是错也是我的梦，至少为自己感动。我知道我有不灭的火种。
Yeah, I know it sounds fucked up. I know it sounds fucked up. And it is truly fucked up. But that's the way it is. So the United States is going to destroy Asia one way or the other. And they thought they could do it by starving them and sanctions and blockading them. And all those seem to have failed. So now they're looking at placement of nuclear weapons in such a way that the retaliatory strikes will hit the launch sites and not the evil people in New York City and Washington, D.C. Yeah, that's what Rand recommends. Now, guys, on the idiocy scale, you can tell these people have never been in China. have never been in China. Chinese don't think like that. They don't go beat up a toady. China goes after the main boss. Always have, always will. They don't go after the toadies. The fucking joke's on you. And they know who the hell they are. So China's all set to destroy the United States and these toadies, these proxy nations. It's a dangerous game the United States is playing. Russia and China is gonna fucking slaughter the United States. How do we know that China would do this? How do we know? Well, because they said so. That's how. They made it. Oh, you probably aren't aware because it wasn't reported in the West. The 4th of February 2022, the declaration of Russian and Chinese friendship. It's right there. The enemy of the world is the United States. It's not Japan. It's not Australia. It's not Korea. It's the United States. And we know through actions that the rapid development of hypervelocity, nuclear-tipped mega bombs, are all designed with America in mind, not Perth, not Osaka, not Seoul, America. You don't design... Now, to give you an idea, and people say, well, America's got 6,000 nukes. Yes, it does. They're all in the kiloton range. And China has from 300 to 1,000. Nobody really knows. Hint, 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 hint. And they're in the 240 megaton range. So, to give you guys to understand what this is, let's do a comparison. Have you ever seen those little tiny jeweler hammers? They're like this big, little tiny jeweler's hammers, you know, to do rings and necklaces and stuff. They're little tiny hammers. These are American nukes. Now, let's compare that to the Chinese and the Russian nuclear weapons, okay? They're these big, massive sledgehammers with a head this big. So heavy you need 2 men to pick up this damn thing. Boom! Yeah, so China only has 1,000 of them. That's enough to glass over the United States from north to south, east to west, with nothing remaining. And those 6,000 little nukes that the United States has are all on obsolete systems that have to be flown by aircraft or shoot by regular trajectory missiles. And you know, guys, those are easy to be intercepted with the latest technologies that both Russia and China possess. You guys are aware of that, right? So we have a situation now where Russia and China both have invincible munitions and an ironclad steel defense. And the United States is defenseless. There's no anti-ballistic missile systems in the United States at all. The idea is they're just going to proxy here, all over here. And you're going to say, yeah, but you know, there's 800 bases all over the world. Yeah. Those bases are insignificant. You hit the major cities, you hit the major military installations, and those people will starve to death. And then you go in there and you arrest them all. I don't like to talk about this because it's an ugly subject. But Lord, oh Lord, oh Lord, it looks like that's what's the plan. That's the plan, guys. As fucked up as that plan is, and it is truly fucked up, that's what it seems to be. So if you want to know this big scale of things, let's just kind of cut away through the bullshit, and I'm going to run through the scale of things. The plan is defined by Rand Corporation, and 2 weeks ago they laid out their latest plan. It's Plan F because plans A, B, C, D, E, F, G have all failed. So this is the fallback plan yet again. It requires a huge expenditure and outlay of military and personnel and obeyance by the client governments, based upon the idea that the US dollar will still be a viable currency. That remains to be seen. And 4, the idea is not to suppress China and Asia and Russia by blockading it, starving it, sanctioning it. It's by the idea of totally destroying it through nuclear and biological weapons. If you don't believe what I'm having to say, read the latest Rand report. It's on their website. Spicy times, because I'm going to tell you what. That's a pretty damn threatening thing. And if I were the head of China, or I was the head of Russia, once I secured my fences and patched up my fences, I would go to the fenceless United States with my shotguns. And then take care of the matters, and then put warning signs all around it. And people, that's my take on geopolitical nonsense and geopolitical fences. I hope you enjoyed this little splurge. I hope that it benefited you in some way. And you know the drill, don't you? Be part of a community. Do your best. And at that, guys, I want to end up with my basic words of advice. Be good. Smile. Make a difference in the world that you live in. Be good to dogs, cats. Be helpful. Be the Rufus. Participate. Don't be a spectator. And when the situation calls, take action. And at that, guys, remember, I might be